For 32 years, she wrote the names of who would die next. A market woman, a bride, a pastor's son, all dead after one name appeared in a strange book she never let anyone touch. They called her a witch, a curse, a punishment from the gods, but no one asked who she used to be. No one asked why she stopped smiling, why she started writing. Once she was the heart of the village. She shared her food, bathed her crippled brother, carried children in the rain until they lied, until they beat her, until the brother she loved stoned her. She didn't beg for revenge, she only wrote names. But pain listens, and sometimes pain becomes power. One by one, the village wept for what they did to her, but by then, her name had already appeared in the book, and it was too late. This is the story of Madara, a woman who couldn't forgive and was destroyed by it. It was a hot afternoon, and noise was already echoing from the Obi family's compound. The whole village buzzed. Their daughter had just completed her NYSC, and the son, who had traveled abroad to learn trade, had returned. Cars lined up outside. Laughter rose. Cooking smoke mixed with loud music. Even the air smelled like achievement. God is wonderful, Mama Aine said, rushing toward the celebration. Yes, so? And she's a widow, another woman added quickly, tying her scarf tighter. Let me go and eat rice so my own turn will come. The Obi compound overflowed. Chidi, the returned son, laughed loudly with his friends. They handed out perfumes, t-shirts, shoes. Children ran about with sweets and biscuits in their mouths. But not far from the joy, tucked in a small hut made of aged brown mud and a rusted zinc roof, sat a woman who once brought joy. Now she erased it. Her name was Madara. She stood behind her dusty curtain, peeking through a slit in the cloth. Her face was still beautiful, but her eyes held something darker. Her brows furrowed. What's happening today? She murmured to herself. Her tone was flat, dry, hollow. Happiness again? In this village? Let me see where it will end. She stepped back from the window, changed her wrapper, adjusted her scarf neatly, and walked out of the house. By the time she arrived at the Obi compound, celebration had swallowed the place. Music blasted from a borrowed speaker. Plates of jollof rice and fried chicken moved from hand to hand. Palm wine flowed. Strangers danced like relatives. Is that Chidi? Madara asked, with a sugar-sweet smile, pointing at the tall man. Yes, oh, Obi's wife replied, her face glowing with joy. He just arrived yesterday. Madara laughed gently and walked up to hug him. We thank God, she said, then added under her breath, we really thank him. Obi's daughter came out with a tray of drinks. Auntie Madara, please take wine. Thank you, Madara said sweetly. Your own will bring us husbands soon, oh, someone teased. Laughter, blessings, clinking cups. Everyone was full, everyone except Madara. She smiled until dusk. Then, with slow steps, she walked away, her shadow trailing behind her as if mourning. Just before her compound, Madara paused. She looked at the glass bottle of wine in her hand. Then, without warning, she smashed it against a mango tree. Glass scattered into the bush. Drink what? She muttered. As if success is for everybody? Her face changed. Her smile vanished. Wrinkles gathered around her forehead like a storm brewing. She pointed 2 fingers toward the wind. We will see. She walked into her hut, lit her candle, smashed it, operating, pulled out a leather-bound book tied with rope. Its pages were old, but the curse it carried, fresh. A soft wind blew through the window. The flame danced. Then came the voice, a whisper, calm, familiar. Shay, you saw them? Their dance? Their noise? Madara's hand moved on its own. She opened to a clean page. Obi, Chidi, Ifoma, Adobe. She wrote their names, each one with a slow, angry stroke. Then closed the book and sat in silence. The next morning, a scream pierced the village. Come on, something has happened. Obi's compound was filled with people again, but not for joy. The whole family, Chidi, his sister, their mother, were found lying still in their sleep. No wounds, no poison, no reason, just gone, cold, lifeless. Eyes open like they were still trying to understand what killed them. Another joy buried, another name erased. That evening, whispers filled the village square. "When will this stop?" a trader's wife asked. "I've said it," one elder said. "She doesn't kill criminals, oh. It's the ones that rise, the ones with testimonies." Some nodded, others folded their arms. But Madara? She was in the back seat of the village church, white scarf tied tightly, eyes closed, her hymn book open. When the pastor said, "Let the living shout hallelujah," she clapped softly. When a woman stood and shared how her daughter just got admission into a foreign school, Madara smiled. Softly. Then later that night, she opened the book again. On Yin, she wrote the name slowly, folded the page, blew out her candle, and waited. The next morning, On Yin collapsed in the school field, dead. And so the villagers tried again. Another week of fasting, another night of prayer, another community cry out to God, but nothing stopped. And Madara still sat in church, still attended birthdays, still helped women carry baskets, still waved to children, but every celebration meant another name, and another name meant another burial. As the candle burned low on her table each night, the book remained open, the whispers stayed near, and the hand that once washed cassava now wrote death. The next market day was strangely quiet. Fewer women came out to roast corn by the roadside. The laughter that usually floated from Nama's provision stall was gone. Even the king's youngest wife, who once sang loudly at the stream, now walked in silence. Something had changed. Not just fear, suspicion. A string of quiet deaths had turned joy into a curse. Villagers no longer announced promotions. Pregnancies were hidden until delivery. Birthdays were whispered, not celebrated. In hushed corners, the elders spoke. "This kind of evil is familiar," said Elder Ikina, resting on his carved stool. "Familiar how?" one of the women asked. Elder Ikina looked toward the forest road, where Madara's hut sat under a crooked pawpaw tree. "We see her," he said slowly, "but we don't know her." The woman crossed herself. "God forbid." But another man nearby whispered, "Maybe God already left this village." Madara sat by her wooden window, staring at the compound across the road. It was Inira's family compound. Her daughter Chioma had just passed her nursing exams. The girls' laughter echoed in the compound. Neighbors congratulated them. Someone had even gifted Chioma a small framed photo of a white doctor holding a stethoscope. Madara watched them with still eyes. She sipped her cold pap slowly. When a child ran across the road shouting, "Auntie Chioma has passed," she dropped her cup. The pap spilled across her wrapper. She didn't move, just stared. That night she lit her candle early. The wind blew harder than usual. She opened her book, picked her pen, she wrote, "Chioma." But then she paused. She remembered something. Earlier that week, Chioma had seen her struggling to carry firewood. The girl had rushed across the path, helped her lift the load, and even said with a smile, "Auntie Madara, you're strong, oh, God bless you." Her hand hovered. The candle shook slightly. Then Madara whispered, "Even love irritates me." She pressed harder. Finish the name. Close the book. Chioma did not die the next day, nor the one after. Madara opened the book on the third night, confused. The ink had faded. The name was gone. A soft wind blew through the room again, and this time the whisper said, "The ones with love are protected." Madara stared into the candle, her face tense. She picked her pen again. Wrote 3 other names, ones who mocked her in church. The next day, 2 of them collapsed during morning devotions. The third one survived. She was the one who visited Madara once with soup and pepper. "You look tired," she had said. "Eat this small. May God strengthen you." The ghost whispered that night, "Your rage is selective." Madara replied out loud, "No, I'm choosing who deserves to stay." At the village square, whispers thickened. A group of mothers gathered by the palm tree beside the primary school. If it's truly Madara, how come no one has done anything? One asked. She goes to church, another replied. She prays more than all of us. But haven't you seen? Since she returned to the village, no celebration has lasted. The group went silent, and from behind them, a young girl walked up. Nena, a church girl no one really noticed. She said softly, maybe she's broken, not wicked. The women turned. Be careful what you say. I only mean, Nena continued, maybe she needs healing, not hate. That evening, Nena went to Madara's hut. She brought palm oil, crayfish, and dried bitter leaf. She knocked. The door creaked open. Madara looked surprised. Who sent you? Nobody, I felt like coming. For you. Madara stared at the girl for a long while, then took the items silently. Thank you. I pray for you sometimes, Nena said, already walking away. That night, Madara opened her book, but no name came to her. She simply stared at the candle until it burned low. The whispers said nothing. The wind was quiet. Only her own breath filled the room. She didn't write, but she didn't sleep either. Later that night, after the candle had burned halfway and the hut was filled with the scent of melting wax, Madara stood up slowly. She walked toward the back of the room to an old wooden frame on the wall. Inside it was a faded photo. She and Amadi, as children, sitting on a tree stump, smiling with roasted yam in their hands. She touched the glass. Her voice broke. You were the only one who saw me. She sat down beside the picture. Her knees ached more these days. Her eyes scanned the book again. No names, no whispers. But the silence was louder than usual. And then from the edge of her own heart, she whispered, maybe I'm tired. No one replied. So she picked the pen again. She thought of a man, Eke, who had just finished building a new house. He danced around the roof last week, even invited her to the Thanksgiving service. She smiled as she wrote, Eke, let's see if I'm still made of stone. She closed the book and blew out the candle. 3 days later, Eche was dead, slumped in the middle of his new compound. His son found him lying next to a half-eaten orange. From her window, Madara watched the funeral crowd. No emotion, no regret, no pride. She simply muttered, stone doesn't bleed. But deep inside her chest, something she couldn't name, shifted, just slightly. That evening, as Madara swept the front of her compound, 2 children walking from the stream spotted her from afar. They stopped laughing. The older one whispered, don't pass there. That's where joy dies. They crossed the road and walked on the other side. Madara paused her sweeping and looked up. Her eyes followed them until they disappeared behind a fence. She continued sweeping. Inside her chest, a single heartbeat echoed like thunder. At that same moment, across the village, a young mother carried her newborn into the back of her house and whispered, don't cry too loud, my baby, not tonight. The wind blew again. The page in Madara's book fluttered once, then stilled. And the night returned to silence. It was a hot afternoon, and the market was filled with noise, hawkers shouting last-minute prices, people dragging their baskets, and thunder rumbling faintly in the distance. Madara had just finished buying some tomatoes and smoked fish when the first drop of rain hit her arm. Vendors began packing up quickly. The street was narrow, and the crowd thickened as people rushed to find shade. She adjusted her nylon bags and crossed toward the roadside to call a taxi. But just then, in the tight corner between 2 stalls, a young boy, no more than 25, came rushing through with a large basin of freshly made pap balanced on his head. Before she could step aside, it happened. The basin tilted. The hot pap splashed down. It poured across Madara's body, her wrapper, her neck, her arms. A thick stream of it soaked her face and chest. Gasps echoed from the nearby shops. A woman at a provision stand covered her mouth. "Oh no! Madam!" the boy exclaimed, stepping back in panic. Madara didn't yell. She simply wiped her face with the back of her hand and said calmly, "I'm really sorry. Was that for sale? Let me pay you. I understand how hard business can be." Slap. The boy's hand landed hard across her face. People screamed, "Jesus!" "But she was apologizing," one woman shouted from behind a table of okra. The boy, still breathing heavily, said, Apologize for what? That's how all these useless witches come out in broad daylight to destroy people's effort. Madara didn't speak. She didn't move. She simply turned her face back towards him, pap dripping from her chin, her cheek red and stinging. Women came forward with wrappers, trying to help clean her up. "Please don't take it to heart," one of them said. "Let it go." Madara nodded gently, her voice soft. "Thank you," she said, watching the boy walk away without looking back. Then she handed the wrapper back to them and entered the waiting taxi. When she got home, she dropped her shopping bags in the kitchen and stood still for a long moment. The oil lamp on the wall flickered faintly. Her breathing was steady. "I'll take my time today," she whispered to herself. "Let me cook and eat." She moved slowly to the stove, washing the fish and slicing the onions with shaking hands, but her eyes were somewhere else. As the soup boiled, her grip on the spoon tightened. Her smile returned, the slow, unsettling one. And when the stew was done, she walked into her dim back room, where an old chair and a wooden shelf waited. She pulled out the book, the cursed book. She sat, crossed her legs, and opened it carefully to a blank page. "For you," she said quietly, remembering the slap, the crowd, the shame. "I will take my time and crumble you to pieces." She imagined the boy's face. Then, one by one, she wrote the name she imagined belonged to him. Slowly, aggressively, each stroke of the pen felt like thunder beneath her fingers. As she finished the last letter, a sharp gust of wind blew through the broken window. Then came the cry. Far away, from the center of the village, a voice rose. A scream. And then another. Someone was shouting a name. Someone else was begging for help. Madara closed the book, calmly. Her eyes glowed in the dim room as she whispered, "For every hand that strikes me, may the earth strike back." Later that week, the sky was calm. Birds flew lazily above rooftops. A gentle breeze stirred the plantain leaves beside Madara's compound. She sat on the wooden bench outside her hut, peeling groundnuts slowly into a bowl. It was quiet, the kind of silence that villages rarely experienced unless something terrible had happened or was about to. Then, a knock. She didn't move. Another knock, firmer this time. She wiped her hands, stood up slowly, and opened the door. There on the other side stood Amadi, her older brother, and Zine, his wife. Zine looked even more beautiful than before. Her skin glowed from fresh oil. Amadi looked thinner, older, but his eyes held warmth, or something close to it. Madara stared at them. "Amadi, Zine," she said, surprised. Zine smiled. "We were passing through and decided to check on you. It's been a while." Amadi held up a small basket of oranges. "We brought you something." She hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." They entered. The room was dark, the air still. Zine looked around and cleared her throat. "How are you, Madara? I hope you're fine. We've been hearing things. But I always told Amadi that no matter what, you're still his blood." Amadi placed the basket gently on the table. "Yes, we know it's been long. Too long." Madara didn't speak. She just sat, waiting. Amadi sighed. "Our daughter, Chiamaka, came back last month. She just finished law school. She's doing well now. She's even thinking of opening a legal advice center for widows and market women." Zine smiled proudly. "She's growing so fast. Sometimes I look at her and remember when, well, you were there when everything started." Madara blinked. The silence returned. She looked at the basket of oranges, then at Amadi, then at Zine. "I see," she said softly. "So now you both remember that I exist?" Zine shifted in her seat. "It's not like that. We're trying to reconnect, to fix things. The past should stay in the past," Madara finished. Amadi looked down. "Maybe, or maybe it should be faced." Madara stood up slowly. Her hands trembled slightly, but she hid it by adjusting her wrapper. "Thank you for the oranges," she said. Zine smiled awkwardly. "You're welcome. Maybe next week Chiamaka can come visit too. She's always wanted to meet you again." Madara's expression didn't change. She nodded and walked them to the door. As they left, Amadi turned. "Madara." She stopped him with her eyes. "Go. Go back to your peaceful house and your successful daughter." They left. Later that night, The lamp in her room flickered. The book sat on the table. Madara stared at it for a long time. She touched the pages like one would touch old wounds. Then she whispered, Chiamaka. She wrote it slowly, and then the names followed. Zine, Ngozi, Enira, Amadi. Her voice cracked as she wrote Amadi's name. She paused. My brother. Her chest tightened. She stared at the name again. No, you're not my brother anymore. She pressed the pencil hard against the paper, dragging the final letter in thick black strokes. She closed the book. The wind outside howled like a beast unchained. Inside, Madara wiped her face gently and said, the wind howled louder that night, bending branches outside her hut as though nature itself mourned something unseen. Madara sat still. The book lay shut before her. A candle burned slowly beside it, casting soft gold against the cracked walls. Her eyes, once firm and focused, now trembled with a heaviness words could not describe. She stared ahead, whispering Amadi's name again. Her voice barely broke the silence. Then the tears came. Heavy, reluctant, silent. She covered her face with both hands, and the pain, so long buried, began to rise again. This time it demanded to be seen, to be remembered. Her back leaned against the wall, her eyes closed, and slowly, painfully, she drifted into memory. It had rained that day too, not like this stormy night, but a quiet drizzle, the kind that made mud glisten and tree leaves dance lightly. Madara had just returned from the market, yet her face wore a soft glow of joy. She entered the family compound and immediately the children ran to her. Joe, Nana, Jimmy, she called, her voice rising with laughter as they circled her legs. She handed out treats one by one, biscuits, sweets, little plastic toys. You remembered the teddy bear, Joe squealed, hugging the soft brown bear like it was treasure. She smiled. A promise is a promise. She moved through the courtyard, dropping vegetables in the kitchen, then heading toward her brother Amadi's room. She knocked gently. Come in, came a familiar voice, weak but expectant. She pushed the door open. Amadi sat in his wheelchair by the window, his face pale but eyes full of light. The wooden arms of his chair creaked as he shifted. Today you opened so fast, Madara said, surprised. I was already at the door, he replied. Where have you been? So you haven't eaten or even bathed? She frowned. There are people in this compound who can push you to the bathroom. Amadi chuckled faintly. Being crippled isn't the end of the world, Madara. She stepped in and dropped her shopping bags on the table. Maybe not, but being stubborn might be. Just as she turned to leave, Amadi pointed quietly at her dress. Madara, is that blood? She paused, her smile faltered. She looked down at the faint stain below her waist, the one she had tried to clean but hadn't noticed had resurfaced. She turned away quickly. I'll be right back. She rushed into her room, locked the door, and sat on the bed, breathing hard. Her fingers touched the small frame by her bedside. A picture of her and Amadi as children. She looked at it for a long time. Her thoughts were loud. I promised you I'd get you a good wife. I won't leave this house until I do. You deserve to be loved too, even more than I do. She stood and adjusted her clothes, then she went into the kitchen and began preparing food. Later, while she stirred the pot of soup, her stepmother, the fourth wife of her late father, entered. Madara, the woman said with a warm smile, you didn't even tell me you were going to the market. I needed fresh things, Madara replied. Too many mouths in this compound. The woman chuckled. You don't have to feed all of us. I want to, Madara said. This family is all I have. As she turned the semovita in the wide pot, the older woman helped her hold it down. You've held this family together, her stepmother said. After Baba died, we all thought things would scatter, but you made sure we didn't beg. Madara offered a small smile. The lands, the cows, the farms, they weren't mine alone. They were our father's. I just manage what he built. You manage it better than any man would. They both laughed, their harmony soft and full. That night, Madara shared the food among all the wives and their children. Even those who once gossiped about her quietly collected their bowls with shy thank yous. Peace, it seemed, was possible, at least for now. A week later, while inspecting the farmland, she saw her. Under the shade of a mango tree, a tall, curvy woman stood, cutting grasses with a small cutlass. Her skin glistened with sweat, but her movements were graceful, confident, sharp. Madara stopped and stared. Who works like this in this village? She walked closer. Hello, she called. The woman turned, surprised but not shaken. Yes, she said calmly. I'm Madara. This land, it belongs to my family. May I ask what you're doing here? The woman smiled, friendly but not apologetic. My name is Zine. I'm cutting leaves for my mother. She's a herbalist. I didn't think anyone would mind. Madara raised an eyebrow. And you didn't think you should ask before cutting from someone's land? Zine straightened. You're right. I'm sorry. But I don't believe in taking what I can't replace. Let me help you feed the goats as a way to make it up. Madara studied her. She didn't know why, but something about the woman pulled at her. She nodded. All right, come with me. That was the beginning of kindness, of trust, of betrayal, of pain. And as Madara sat now in her dim hut, the book before her, her heart cried for the version of herself that once smiled easily, that once believed the world was kind. But that woman was gone. Now her name was a curse whispered in fear, and deep within her, something darker had awakened and refused to let go. It had started with a wedding gold. Zine had only been married for 3 weeks when the gold bangles her mother gifted her suddenly went missing. She was dramatic, crying, kneeling, screaming curses. It was Madara, Zine cried. She's the only one who entered my room yesterday. She always looks at the gold like it's hers. The family compound gathered in the main courtyard. All 5 wives of the late chief sat on plastic chairs. Amadi looked lost. The other women whispered. Some looked at Madara with side eyes. Others wouldn't even meet her gaze. I didn't take your gold, Madara said. Her voice was calm, but inside she was bleeding. You're jealous I finally have what you don't, Zine hissed. I gave you food. I washed your clothes when I came. You paid my dowry. But deep down, you wanted to keep this family for yourself. It was a lie, but a beautiful one. The kind people wanted to believe. Even Anira, one of the wives Madara had once nursed through childbirth, stood and said, Madara has always had too much access to everything. It's time we draw the line. Amadi didn't speak. He didn't defend her. Instead, he muttered, if you took it, return it. Please? That broke her. Madara ran into her room, sobbing uncontrollably. Behind her, laughter echoed. Zine and her allies had won. Days passed. The story of the evil sister spread. And then came the night of the prophecy. During a vigil in the village square, a prophetess screamed, there is a woman in our midst, a curse to wombs, to marriages, to growth. Eyes turned. To the woman who sweeps the compound every morning, your hands are not clean. The next morning, the village council declared her an abomination. She has brought famine, death, division. Stones were thrown. Madara was tied to a wooden stake. Her clothes were torn. Amadi did nothing. She was dragged to the evil forest. No trial, no farewells, only shame, only silence. The evil forest was supposed to be her grave, but death never came. Instead, it was silence and spirits. Inside the hut, she found their old childhood journal, the one she and Amadi used to scribble on. It was tucked beneath rotting mats and land records. When she opened it, the pages were blank, almost glowing. That was the beginning. Every night her mind would whisper names, not loud, not angry, just soft pain, and she would write them. Zine, Inira, Ngozi, one by one, and one by one. They died. One night as the wind roared through the forest, and Madara knelt in tears beside the journal, a cold voice whispered from the corner of the hut. They don't remember good deeds, it said. Humans forget kindness. Madara trembled. Who are you? I am what pain births, the voice replied. You called me with your silence, with every sob you held back. What do you want from me? You've already begun. All I offer now is purpose. Purpose, she repeated, unsure. Teach them, the voice murmured. Teach them what betrayal earns, what love corrupted becomes. And if I forgive them? The spirit laughed, a sound like leaves tearing in the wind. Then love will bloom. But if you write those you still love, those who beg for forgiveness, then love will destroy. The next day she wrote another name, then another, and another. It wasn't until months later, when a widow named Mama Nkechi was on her deathbed, that the truth came out. I overheard Mama Zine and her daughter. It was all for the lands. They poisoned Amadi's mind. They stole the gold themselves and planted the lie. They wanted Madara gone so they could control everything. Mama Zine, the famous herbalist once praised for her roots and leaves, was exposed as a liar who used false prophecy to destroy her enemy. The village broke into unrest. Children were dying. Marriages crumbled. The king lost his heir. Finally, the elders gathered and said, "It is time. We must beg the one we cast out." A delegation of the oldest men and crying women walked into the forest barefoot. They knelt in front of Madara's hut. "We were blind. Please return. Take all that was taken. Save us." Madara came out in white, her hair long and loose, her eyes unreadable. "I'm not who you knew," she whispered, "and this land is not what it was." They begged. She nodded and followed them back. Back in the village, they gave her her father's house, freshly painted with guards at the gate. She attended council meetings in silence. She swept the church floor every Saturday. She smiled during testimonies. But every night, when the candles flickered in her room, she opened the book. Zine's child, now a grown woman, had become a lawyer. She stood before the village once and said, "I will fight injustice with my voice, like Auntie Madara once did." Madara watched from a corner, lips tight. Later that night, she whispered, "Voice is not justice." She wrote the lawyer's name. Next morning, she collapsed at court. Amadi, older now, gray-haired and weak, came to her one night crying, "I was wrong, Madara. I was blind. I never stopped loving you." She almost forgave him. Almost. But when she touched the scar on her back from the beating she received in front of the palace, her heart hardened. She wrote his name next. And then she paused. Something was wrong. The candle shook. The air grew heavy. The book began to hum. She opened the last page. It was writing, but not her hand. It was a red ink. Letter by letter, it spelled Madara. Her name. Her breath caught. She dropped the book. "No, I didn't write it. I didn't mean—" A force grabbed her throat. Invisible. Cold. She gasped. Her knees hit the ground. She clawed the air. And in one long silence, Madara, the writer, became the written. Atum. They found her body the next morning. The book was open beside her. No wound, no blood, just wide eyes and a frozen scream. The entire village went quiet for weeks. Funeral songs refused to rise. Even the birds flew around her house, but never over it. At the palace square, a young boy named Toby stood beside his grandmother and asked, "Was she a witch?" The old woman sighed. Her voice cracked like dry wood. "She was a woman," she said. "A woman we failed." Another elder added, "Maybe we didn't hear God clearly. Maybe we just wanted someone to blame." And in a dark hut, deep in the forest, the last page of the book turned on its own. Wind howled softly, and a faint voice whispered, "Walls have ears. Be careful what you speak, what you think, what you feel, because somewhere another book had opened."